What if there was one simple spice that you could just have 1 or 2 teaspoons of every morning? You could put it in your coffee, you could put it in your yogurt, you could have it in your tea, you could eat it straight up. That would dramatically impact your insulin levels, that would stabilize glucose, could even have a thermic effect and help you burn fat. Cinnamon has some really wild components to it. Now we have to exercise some caution because too much cinnamon can actually do some pretty problematic things. It can actually kind of disarm some of the elements of the liver, which we'll talk about in a little bit. We'll talk about how to use cinnamon and what doses to use it at and when for specific benefits. If you've tried using cinnamon, you've had good results with it, this could be some of the reason why. It's not all fluff. There's legit clinical evidence behind this. Drop me a comment down below if you've had success with it. I'm curious to hear also what your favorite brand of cinnamon is, because I'm always trying to learn, because you don't want to use certain cinnamons. Like you want to make sure you use Ceylon cinnamon because it's higher quality. We'll talk about that too. Also, subscribe, new videos every day. The first thing that literally just a half a teaspoon to 1.5 teaspoons can do is significantly mimic insulin and impact your fasting blood sugar. High blood sugar in the morning before you eat is like a hallmark characteristic of prediabetes or insulin resistance or inching your way towards insulin resistance. Because what happens is you have a surge of blood glucose that aligns with cortisol. And if you are insulin resistant first thing in the morning, what's going to happen is that glucose is going to go higher. There's also this thing that's called the dawn phenomenon. When you kind of get up in the morning, your glucose is high. It's because what happens is around 3 or 4 a.m., a lot of times you'll start to dump more glucose. You'll start to actually increase your glucose levels without even eating. It's almost like, hey, I didn't eat anything. Why is my glucose so high? This is the reason why. There was a 2024 meta-analysis, which means they looked at a lot of different studies that was published in Phytotherapy Research. And this was interesting because they looked at 24 different trials in this. And they found, like bar none, cinnamon had significant effects on insulin. It had significant effects on glucose. The reason it had effects on insulin we'll talk about a little bit later, but mainly it acted as a mimetic. So it means it mimicked insulin within the body. There's this compound in it called MHPC. This also decreases gluconeogenesis. So it decreases the amount of glucose that the liver actually produces too. So this means it's having a big impact on your glucose levels in a fasted state. So again, how much you would need for this effect? In a fasted state, again, you would want to do just a half a teaspoon all the way up to 1.5 teaspoons of Ceylon cinnamon. This one you don't even have to have in your coffee. You put this in water and have this effect. Now, this is a more long-term thing, but you want to do it in a fasted state because you want it to be able to kind of teach the body that you have this insulin mimetic that's kind of helping stabilize glucose in the morning. Hopefully that can kind of reverse engineer some other processes in the body. Also, don't forget to subscribe once again. It's really important on this channel. The next thing is your post-meal glucose and your appetite. It's a different mechanism. Okay, so remember how cinnamon is an insulin mimetic. Okay, that's great, but there was a study published in American Journal of Clinical Nutrition that took it a step further. They found that when subjects were consuming slightly higher amounts of cinnamon, we're talking more like 3 all the way up to 6 teaspoons of cinnamon, which is a lot, then we're looking a little bit more of a gastric emptying effect, which is really cool. It almost has an impact sort of like Ozempic in that way. Like it's a GLP-1 effector. So it ends up making it so GLP-1 increases. It's not a receptor agonist like Ozempic is, but it has this impact on gastric emptying, which delays the glucose spike. Now, again, you don't want to take too much. So there's a compound that's in cinnamon, it's called coumarin. This can sort of affect how the liver metabolizes things. And if you have too much cinnamon all the time, there is almost a toxicity that can occur. So I wouldn't really recommend going up to 6 teaspoons, but I think that 3 teaspoons mixed into some food, like maybe it's your oatmeal, maybe it's your yogurt, would be a decent thing. It will delay that gastric emptying, and it will definitely delay the absorption of carbohydrates. So you have carbs with breakfast, this could be a really good thing for you. Another application that you could use the cinnamon for in this case is maybe after a fast. Having cinnamon post-fast will kind of delay the gastric emptying and blunt the blood sugar spike that you get from it. Really, really important there. A lot of times what I'll do is add cinnamon even to a protein shake in the morning. It delays the gastric emptying so that protein shake becomes more potent. I don't know why more brands aren't thinking of this with like cinnamon, right? Like cinnamon in a protein shake delays the gastric emptying. So then you're getting more satiety out of that protein shake. I have protein shakes for 2 reasons. One, when I want fast absorption to build muscle, Or 2, when I want satiety. More often than not, I'm using a protein shake as a satiety tool. I'll have a whey protein shake after a workout, but for breakfast or like sort of a satiety protein shake, I'll usually use SunWarrior's active protein because it has a little bit more of what I'm looking for. It's a blend. It's actually plant-based protein, which I'm not a plant-based person, but this particular protein shake for satiety just makes a lot of sense because it has fiber in it. It also has probiotics in it. It also has digestive enzymes. So I'm actually utilizing the protein the way that I want to. It's a really unique compound that focuses on minerals as well. So you've got a good variety of minerals to help the proper utilization and sort of the mineralization and hydration within the body. I'll put a link down below. It's a 20% off discount link. Definitely recommend that one for appetite. I'll usually do like 3 teaspoons of cinnamon in that shake. So a hefty amount, but the chocolate version with cinnamon tastes super good anyway. So I'll link out to it down below. It's in the top line of the description for that type of protein shake. The third thing that it does, cinnamon actually helps us use insulin better. It doesn't just act as an insulin mimetic, it actually improves our HOMA-IR. So it actually improves our insulin dynamics. We actually use insulin better. So that same phytotherapy research study I mentioned earlier, that 24-study meta-analysis, found that cinnamon reduced HOMA-IR, which is the homeostatic level of insulin. So essentially, it's making it so that the body uses insulin more efficiently. So when you do have an insulin spike, you need less of it to actually get the glucose into the cell. Huge benefit for insulin resistance. Here's a wild benefit. Okay, maybe you have been going to the doctor and they've been telling you your triglycerides are high, or maybe your LDL is high. These are things that do matter. Okay, there's a lot of nuance there, definitely. Okay, it all depends on the kind of diet you're doing. But one thing that a lot of us agree on is triglycerides are problematic. High triglycerides, not very good. There was a 2022 meta-analysis that found that cinnamon had a wild effect on lipids, on LDL and triglycerides. In this study, they found that just adding cinnamon to your diet daily, subjects ended up decreasing their LDL by 6 milligrams per deciliter, and they decreased their triglycerides by 9 milligrams per deciliter. What is happening here? Why is this going on? What's the reason? Because cinnamon helps increase what's called AMPK, it decreases what's called hepatic or liver lipogenesis, so the formation of fat from the liver or even around the liver. But this is great for just like fat deposits in general. But what's interesting is it actually increased what is called LDL receptor activity. So we have receptors that receive LDL. LDL is sort of like a boat docking into a dock. The receptor is the dock. A lot of times what happens is they get saturated and they actually don't allow the LDL to dock. So you end up with more LDL floating through the bloodstream. So what happens is when you increase receptor activity or affinity, more LDL ships can dock to the site, decreasing your serum LDL. So definitely a good thing, what we're looking for. Now, probably the biggest thing that you're looking for is the weight loss aspect and the fat loss aspect, which has a lot to do with insulin resistance. The more fat that's on us, the more likely we are to be insulin resistant just because of the inflammation that is secreted by the adipocytes, so by the fat cells. So you have the cytokine release or adipokine release. So check out this research. Journal of Food Biochemistry, there's a 2022 meta-analysis. They found with this that just about 2 to 3 grams of cinnamon per day, which comes out to about 1 to 2 teaspoons, ended up leading to a 1.5 pound weight loss in a couple of weeks. Was the cinnamon magically burning fat? Not necessarily. Well, there is a concept there which we'll talk about, but more than likely it was the appetite suppression and the insulin modulation. So they ate less and they lost more weight. Now, there's nuance there once again, but again, when you look at all the data aggregated, you're like, okay, cinnamon seems to be pretty darn good for fat loss. But where it gets kind of fascinating, I like to put my mechanistic hat on and kind of understand what's going on. There's something that's called cinnamaldehyde, and there was a cool 2017 study. It was done in rodents and cultured cells, human cells and rodent cells. But it's still really interesting and it confirms previous research. Essentially what they found is that this cinnamaldehyde ends up having an impact on uncoupling proteins. So it was making fat cells burn more fat as heat, dissipating fat as heat. So it was doing this thing called mitochondrial uncoupling, which if you're advanced, you know what that is. If it's really something new to you, it's essentially where the mitochondria, the energy powerhouse in the cell, is just emitting energy as heat instead of actually creating energy. So it's a good thing for fat loss. So the researchers at the University of Michigan, they were essentially just treating these cells, fat cells, with cinnamon. And they were finding that they were doing all these crazy things. Now, this is in fat cells, not directly in humans, but again, it confirms the previous research that researchers have seen, both in rodents, when they were actually losing fat and prevented obesity by using cinnamon, they would overfeed rodents, give them cinnamon, and they wouldn't get as obese. So they knew something was going on. And then, of course, we see the human data. We just need to understand mechanisms through these cultured cell studies. So no guarantee that's what's going on, but it seems like the cinnamaldehyde having this thermogenic effect on a fat cell is the most likely case. And the last really important thing, when you add this to coffee, you are getting an antioxidant effect. Studies have demonstrated that cinnamon is lowering malondialdehyde, MDA, in the body, which is a marker of sort of oxidative stress. And it's telling us that because of the cinnamon, we are having an increase in these major antioxidants in the body, glutathione, superoxide dismutase, which are really important for overall just insulin resistance and cellular functioning to begin with, not to mention just plain feeling good. So just to recap how you should use this stuff. If you're looking at it for weight loss, cinnamon any time of the day is going to be beneficial. Okay, if you're looking at it for insulin resistance, definitely first thing in the morning is going to be the optimal time, and you're looking at 1 to 2 teaspoons. If you're looking at it from more fat loss perspectives, you might want to be more in the ballpark of like 2 teaspoons. Now, if you're looking at it for the appetite suppression effect, sort of the Ozempic-like GLP-1 effect, you need to start going up in dose, right? And you want to have it with your meals. So you'd want to have more like, again, maybe 3-4 teaspoons along with yogurt or along with your meal or sprinkled on your food or your protein shake. Again, exercise caution, and please only use Ceylon cinnamon, because some of the other cinnamons that are out there are going to be higher in that coumarin content, and they're almost knockoff cinnamons. They're not real cinnamon like the Ceylon cinnamon. It is really important. So as always, don't forget to subscribe and keep it locked to here on my channel. See you tomorrow.